Reading with your kids.
Hola, ni hao, konnichiwa, assalamu alaikum, shalom, mahaba, moni muli wanji, namaste, jambo, bienvenidos. Hi, my name is Jedley, and this is the Reading with Your Kids podcast. We're coming to you from the beautiful neighborhood of Reedville in the southwest corner of Boston, Massachusetts. We're so delighted that you are joining us in our mission to help families grow closer through reading. Thank you so very, very much. Please be sure to subscribe to the show on the iHeartRadio app, on Amazon Music, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher Radio, Podbean, wherever you find your podcast. Our guest today is Dr. Stephanie Ryan. She is here to celebrate Let's Learn About Chemistry. Before Dr. Stephanie joins us, we would love it if you could join us at our website, readingwithyourkids.com. Sign up for our newsletter. Make sure you know what's coming up on the show. Find out what you might have missed and download a whole lot of great stuff for free. Also, please be sure to join us on social media, facebook.com/readingwithyourkids, at Jedley Magic on Twitter, and at Reading With Your Kids on Instagram. We also have a fantastic page on Pinterest. It's Reading With Your Kids. And of course, we would love it if you could tell your friends about the Reading With Your Kids podcast. Join us right now from right outside of Indianapolis in Indiana. We're really excited to speak to the author of Let's Learn About Chemistry, Dr. Stephanie Ryan. Hey, Dr. Stephanie, welcome to the Reading With Your Kids podcast.
Hi, thanks for having me.
I'm really excited to have you on chemistry. It's like one of those things that I absolutely failed at. Talk about epic failure, and it didn't lead to any other learning, it seems like. But I didn't try to start learning about chemistry until high school, and I really wasn't interested in it. And so your approach is completely opposite. You're saying let's get kids interested in chemistry at an early age.
Yeah, and to have them look at those experiences, less like how we did learning chemistry in high school, but more that chemistry helps us explain things that are around us and looking at it more like a tool instead of a topic in a book to learn about, so that it'll be more a part of their lives.
Yeah, that's, as I look back on chemistry, I think the only cool thing that I remember from it was going in, I think it was the first lab, and the instructor mixed oxygen and hydrogen and threw a match in it, and boom, there was an explosion, a little drop of water at the bottom of a test tube. And I thought, that was cool. This is going to be a great class. But then the rest of the time it was looking at a book, reading words that I had no idea what they meant.
I think that is a big failure on the part of chemistry, is that we do the big old bait and switch where it's like, here's some cool flashy stuff, here's a book. And I think that there are different ways to approach it for sure.
That is a great way to describe it. It was bait and switch. It's like, we're going to do, here we're going to read. So tell us about your approach. How young are we talking about? How young are you wanting to get kids interested in chemistry?
From the first moment that they can start sorting their toys. So that's how I got the idea, was my son was sorting his toys. I think he was about 1. It's been so long now in my head. I forget. He was sorting his toys by color, and his favorite color is orange. And so all of his orange toys were in the corner. And I thought to myself, wait a second. A lot of chemistry in that book learning that we were talking about is actually sorting. Is this a compound or an element? Is this an atom or a molecule? And things like that. And it was like, maybe we could talk about sorting in this way a little earlier and have kids kind of learn this science sorting that will help them understand these concepts later. And so I took it a step further that a lot of adults even don't know how to justify claims with evidence. And so I took it as an opportunity to have multiple correct answers, to teach kids just that as long as you can justify your claim with evidence, there's learning there happening. And so in the book, we use 4 real children, and the illustrations are their likenesses and their favorite toys and their favorite things to do. So there's some pages of superheroes, and it's putting chemistry in the everyday so that it's not just in a book. And sometimes the colors are the same, or sometimes you can eat all of the objects but one, and things like that. And kids can pick out on any of those observations, and they have to say, why is that one different? And it's okay. It's okay if they picked that these are all red except that one, or this one moves and that one doesn't. It doesn't matter what the observation they made. If it's not chemistry, it's still fine. And that's my note to parents, is that as long as they are making an observation and talking about why they think that, that's right.
I really like that. And I really like that you said the chemistry is all around us, because that's something that it just seemed like something that was in a lab. I had no idea. I love to cook. I had no idea that when I'm cooking, I'm actually performing chemistry.
All the time. Yeah. And it's something that the pandemic really brought out for me. As an educator and a science nerd, I always see science around me, obviously. But in terms of things that I could teach my 4-year-old, I just started to have this almost like a pair of glasses I would put on, and it would be a lens of how simplified can I look at this. And you can look at just baking soda and vinegar. You don't need fancy chemicals. You can just use stuff that you've got in your kitchen to talk about things like, what happens? Is this a solid, a liquid, or a gas? What was formed? Did it change? Is it still the same thing? Can you get it back? We use s'mores a lot to talk about science concepts, like melting of chocolate is a physical change and things like that. And it's just stuff you've got in your house already. And so I really like to think in terms of math, even patterns, simple patterns of making parfaits with your kids, have them choose what pattern they repeat the ingredients. That's math. And it doesn't have to be this really complicated game or anything you do with them. It could just be something you do all the time.
I love that, because I think when you're trying to introduce something to kids, if it seems tough, there might be some kids that just check out and never check back in. We talk about how kids who aren't read to when they're 1, 3, 4 years old, when they get to kindergarten or preschool, they're so far behind, and it's hard for them to catch up. I think the same can be true when we're talking about the sciences. If the first introduction to science is this, really challenging thing with words we don't understand and concepts we don't understand, and it feels like we can only do this thing in this sacred kind of sciencey laboratory, then a lot, probably like me, we just check out, as opposed to what you're talking about, helping kids understand that science is all around this. We're doing science. We're doing math. When we're putting patterns together, that's math. When we're mixing ingredients, that's chemistry. When we're watching the chocolate melt, that's an observation of something sciencey going on.
Absolutely. And it's something I remember hearing Ruth Spiro talk about in one of your podcasts, about how failure and making a mistake is such a part of science that we don't introduce our kids to that, because school is you get your A, you need to get the right answer. And that's how I grew up, was I needed to know the answer. I didn't need to know how to get there. And the path to it wasn't important. It was that I got the right answer. And I like to think of it as when your kids are learning how to walk, they wobble, they fall, and you don't say, no, that's wrong, and correct them. Mm-hmm. You let them go through their own little process of how they feel their balance, how they feel like they're walking, and then you cheer them on the whole way. And we don't do that with school. We should. And it should be oh, look, we made a mistake. How could we change what we just did? So that you can build on this understanding to help you really understand it better.
Yeah, I think that's important. And like you said, when our kids are first learning how to walk, when they take those first 2 steps and fall, it's not like you failed. It's that you took 2 steps. That's awesome. And then, you get to school, you turn in your test and you write down a 5 instead of a 4. it's wrong. It's not that you did the first 4 steps perfectly, but you just missed that last step. You failed. And boy, that's an how can we change that in our educational system? Or are we changing it?
I know that like I said, as someone who went through this process of where I got the A, I have a really hard time with that. And as a parent, I catch myself, I bite my tongue all the time where I want to correct my son when he has a very wrong understanding of something. But I really take a step back and I'm like, it'll fix itself. He will come across something that will challenge that for him and it will get fixed. And so I challenge him to explain why he thinks that and kind of solidify that in his head for himself. And that way, when something does come up that challenges it, he can build on that. So for example, we did an activity this summer of where we made popsicles. And we were talking about solids, liquids, and gases. And I asked him how we could turn this liquid into a solid popsicle. And he thought we could put it outside. So we tested it with ice cubes first, and we put water outside on a 90-something degree day in Indiana, and it disappeared. And it blew his mind. Like, where did it go? What happened? And instead of saying, see, you're wrong, it needs to go in the freezer, like I wanted to, because I just wanted this task to be done because it felt like it was dragging out. But then I said, what could we try now? And he tried all sorts of different things because he wanted to figure it out. Now, forevermore knows that freezers make things cooler and they turn into solids. And so that actually, when it started snowing one day, he told me that he thought the rain was turning solid because it was cold. And I was like, I didn't even have to teach you that. That came from popsicles. That's awesome. And so it's just a big shift. And I don't know how we do it in schools. I think they're starting to try to shift that way. It's a big undertaking, but at home as a parent, it's something I can definitely go after with him.
Yeah. Well, I think it reminds me to remind our listeners that as a parent, you are your child's first and most important teacher. And not all of you have a PhD in whatever, but you all have a lot more schooling and knowledge than your 5-year-old. And you, unlike the teachers in school that are like my beautiful wife who has been teaching for 33 years and has not one kid, but a bunch of kids. And she has a limited amount of time, and maybe she doesn't have time to put the glass of water outside to let it evaporate and come back because she also has to teach math and take kids to gym and fill out reports and all these other things. But you as a parent, you have that time to take with your kids. And I know you're busy, and I know you think to yourself, I don't have the time, I need to do this. The time you spend with your kids learning little lessons like this, as Stephanie has been telling us, that's worth more than anything else that may be wanting your time. So I really encourage you to take that time, be your child's most important teacher, and give yourself a lot more credit than you're giving yourselves right now, because your kids can learn amazing things from you.
Yeah, and something parents sometimes are really, they feel like, I don't have a PhD, I don't know this, I didn't do well in chemistry, how am I qualified to teach this to my kid? You're right, you have a lot more experience than you think you have. Like, you know that when you drop something, it will fall. It's gravity. Your 4-year-old doesn't know that. They're working on that. And so, like, you actually know a lot more than you think you do.
Yeah. Yes. Wait until they're 15 and 16 and they may be taking an advanced chemistry course that's over your head to kind of sit back and tap out.
Right.
But you don't even want to tap out then, because that's a great time. I don't know, Stephanie, I might be wrong, but I'm thinking that, when your kids come home at 15, 16, 17 years old and they're taking organic chemistry, and that only comes to mind because I had an organic chemist come on one of my podcasts, and I had no idea what she was talking about. But that could be a great time to ask your child to teach you what they're learning, because it's in the teaching that real learning happens. Am I right?
Yeah, that's a great thing. Hey, can you explain this to me? I don't understand it. And by the act of explaining something really helps teach it. Another good thing to do in that case would be to learn alongside your child. Take the opportunity to be a little more versed in organic chemistry yourself. Watch YouTube videos together to learn more. Find news articles about organic chemistry in the news together and things like it. See if you can explain it better than the article has.
Yeah. Hey, one of the things in the notes that you sent me to prepare for the show, you talked about making snow ice cream. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because I might want to check that out. I can't do regular ice cream.
Well, I'm pretty sure this would still be a problem then if it's a lactose issue because you still add milk to the snow.
All right, well, tell us the recipe anyways, because some folks out there can do ice cream.
For snow ice cream, you can just use snow and sugar and milk. But if you can't have milk, you can use any other kind, like coconut milk or almond milk, whatever substitute you use, salt and vanilla extract, and then you mix it all together. Another way to make it without snow is to use just the creamer or the milk product that you're using in a baggie with the sugar and the vanilla, and then you put it inside another baggie that has ice and salt. And you just shake, and it freezes it because of the freezing point of salt water is different than the freezing point of regular water. So it made it much cooler by adding the salts. And it freezes the ice cream in the baggie, and then you have a little scoop you can eat right there. Kids love that activity.
Yeah, that sounds like a lot of fun. And what a neat kind of experiment showing that, when you add these things together, it freezes differently. It makes it act differently.
And mixtures. So another easy one to do with kids is, look, I've got these ingredients, and if I add them together in a row, I could still pick each ingredient out. So it's not mixed well. But once I mix this all together, can I pick out a sugar molecule? I can't. It's very homogeneous. It's mixed together very well. And so looking at those two different, you can do that with smoothies or with this ice cream activity. They're just simple concepts like that really help kids really solidify this in their minds.
Yeah, I love that. And I want to go back to something that you were talking about earlier, asking kids to reason and explain why they think something is. I think that that's like when we sit down and we're reading a book with our kids and we're asking them, what do you think is going to happen next? Or what do you think about this? And how do you feel? How do you think the character? I think that these are questions that are challenging, but they're also very empowering. We're letting our kids know that we are really interested in what they think.
And that they have agency over their ideas. Yes, for sure. Yeah. That their idea is just as valid as ours. And we really want to know what they think. And one of the things I really like about my book is when I read it to a group of children, it empowers the whole room because they each raise their hand and they're like, "Ooh, I have an idea and mine's a little different than his." And it's really interesting to hear them even compare their own idea to someone else's. And that's important too, to look like, oh, wow, we're actually both right here. This is correct in both of these. And that's really cool that we both found something.
Mm-hmm. You were saying earlier that it was really hard for you sometimes to, when your son was trying to make a popsicle and he said, well, let's bring it outside. And so the doctory, sciencey part of you was like, no, stick it in the freezer. Did you experience any of that when you were writing Let's Learn About Chemistry? Was it kind of frustrating sometimes thinking, why doesn't everybody understand this naturally?
Sort of. So I have always been interested in explaining things to people who are not scientists. So like my dissertation, I actually had my parents read it to make sure that they understood it, because I want to make sure that whatever I put out there is consumable by the public. So I wrote the book in its first draft, and it was consumable by some of the public at the time. It was more for scientists only. And that doesn't really fit with how I think science is for everyone, because science is everywhere. It should not just be for scientists' kids. And so I actually worked with my husband, a non-scientist, who's a science enthusiast, but felt a little put off by how technical the book had been. And with a developmental editor to help me help parents through this, that if they didn't know the answer, like to get through the book and not feel like they didn't know what they were doing. And so the final version of the book is very parent friendly, and they can find out the answer if they don't know it. And you can skip pages if you feel like your kid's not ready, and it's very segmented that way. So I wouldn't say it was frustrating in fixing the content to be more for a lower level. That's actually really fun for me to do. That's one of my favorite parts about what I do. But the making sure the parents didn't feel put off was a new component for me I hadn't thought about, because I mean, my whole parent time I've been a parent, I've also been a scientist. So it wasn't something I had considered that experience.
Yeah, I can imagine. It's like, I get this. Why can't you get it? Well, it's just a reminder that we all have our unique gifts. Not only our kids, but as parents, we all have unique gifts. And one of the neat things about a book is that if you're a parent and you don't feel that you're equipped to teach your kids about STEM or math or whatever it is, you have great experts out there like Dr. Stephanie, who've taken the time to, and I'm not going to say dumb things down, but make things easier for you to understand, and that way give you the ability to share with your kids. And hopefully when your kids are seeing you have this interest in something like chemistry, they're going to be, the most important person in my life thinks chemistry is kind of cool. I'm going to check it out. And I think that that's a valuable thing to give to our kids.
I think them seeing the parent learn too is also important, because it reiterates that learning doesn't end when you leave school. Learning is this lifelong endeavor, that we're always learning things. And so if you see your parent, who's this most important person in your life, learning alongside with you, that's really cool to show that, look, my mom learns, my dad learns. We could do this together.
Yeah. Hey, I don't mean to put you on the spot, but you said, learning is a lifelong thing. A lot of us will think, oh, I graduated from high school, I'm done learning. And there's a lot more people out there saying, wow, you got your doctorate, you're done. You don't need to learn anything else. You learn everything. But you have a long life ahead of you. What kind of things are you looking forward to learning next?
Oh, right now I'm learning all about social media and all of that. I'm looking to start a YouTube channel this summer when my son goes back to daycare. So learning new things is always interesting, but I think that, the world, we learn new things every day. There are new inventions, new medicines, new all sorts of things. And to learn about those is, I think, one of the privileges of being an adult, I guess, where we get the time to look into the things that interest us. Because we're not in school, we're not forced to have these very specific classes we have to take. Like, we can look at an interest we have. Like, you really love to cook? Dive right in. Like, that's learning. It's just learning in a different way.
Yeah. Hey, before I go, I just want to, we're kind of living in this really crazy time right now, and a time where it's been very difficult for folks, but it's also kind of an amazing time, because in, just a few short months, science came up with a vaccine for COVID-19, and that just kind of blows me away. I remember when, we first went into lockdown and people like, well, let's get a vaccine. I'm like, well, that's going to take 10 years, because that's usually how long they take. What do you think about this amazing achievement in science that we've experienced?
It blows me away. And the idea that so many places work together to share information globalization of science, and it was really cool to see. I think the disappointing part of it was that I don't think a lot of people understood what a vaccine does. And that was I think that's a little bit of a failure on the part of science, of our educating people, that a lot of people seem to think of a vaccine as an antibiotic, which is not. And so that was something that was a little motivating for me to help, like, okay, what can I do in this realm? I know some of the books in this realm have tried to approach it, like Chris Ferry has the pandemic book for babies and stuff like that. So I think that there's definitely something I could do to talk about what vaccines do and the development of them. I just honestly haven't had time to surviving the pandemic.
Well, we look forward to anything that you come up with, and hopefully you'll come back and share that with us if that project comes to fruition. Dr. Stephanie, tell everybody, please, where they can go online to connect with you and find out more about Let's Learn About Chemistry.
The best place to find me is on Instagram. We post activities for parents nearly daily. It's usually daily, but I hesitate to say daily. It really locks you in. But we include questions that parents can ask. I include failures of when things mess up, things like that, so that parents can really feel confident in doing this with their kids. We also do themes of where I pick a theme that my son really was interested in, and we dive in with education activities, STEM. We talk to an expert, so each week has its own theme. And that's at Let's Learn About Science, and I would say that's the best place. And then for my book, the best place right now is probably Amazon to get it, just because a lot of bookstores are still closed.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. If you do have a favorite independent or small bookstore in your area, just pick up the phone, give them a call, and say, hey, yo, can you order Let's Learn About Chemistry by Dr. Stephanie Ryan? They can get it there in a couple of days, and then bring it out curbside, no contact delivery. Just throw it through your window.
Definitely, yeah.
We've had a great time speaking with the author of Let's Learn About Chemistry, Dr. Stephanie Ryan. Hey, Dr. Stephanie, thanks so much for being with us.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Please join us for the next edition of the Reading with Your Kids podcast. Really excited to welcome back Matthew Paul Turner. Matthew's been on the show before. He's one of my favorite guests. This upcoming interview is so very, very powerful. It's about a brand new book. I was going to say it's about his brand new book, but it's not his alone. The name of the book is What is God Like? And it's a book that he is finishing for his friend. It's a really beautiful story, a really powerful story, and you don't want to miss it. It's the next episode of the Reading with Your Kids podcast. Matthew Paul Turner will be joining us. We hope you join us also. If you're the author of a fantastic children's book, we'd love to have you as a guest on the podcast. Being a guest, it's fun, it's easy. It gives you the chance to tell thousands of people about your fantastic book, and it doesn't cost a thing. No need to pay anybody to facilitate your visit. All you need to do is to go to our website, readingwithyourkids.com. Click on the Authors Click Here button at the top of the page. Scroll on down to where it says Be a Guest. Want to thank the folks who made today's show so wonderful. Of course, I want to thank our guest, Dr. Stephanie Ryan. Be sure to check out Let's Learn About Chemistry. Also want to thank my team, Alejandra Doherty, Fatima Khan, Helen Fraser, Justina Thompson. I want to thank my beautiful wife for all the support she gives me. Most of all, we all want to thank you. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. And as always, thank you so very much for taking the time to make the world a better place by reading with your kids. I'll be looking for the next edition of the Reading with Your Kids podcast.